All right, guys, it is cash game week. No GPP bros allowed. This is a show for the true cash game grinders. I've been tweaking my shell this morning. I've been shoveling snow, getting calluses on my hands, ready to build the highest floor, most optimal cash game lineup for week 18. Today, we have a very special guest. It's none other than Mr. Derek Carty, the man behind the Blitz projection system over at Roto Grinders. We're going to get in the weeds, and we are going to dominate in week 18.
I suffer from a debilitating condition known as atropic shockitis.
Peter's one of the greatest depositors I've ever seen.
Trust the process. Let's go. Let's go.
I got auto matched with Levitan. This is bullshit.
If I just go the other way in that 66, I win all the money. All the money.
If I had 150 lineups, I'd win too.
Process over results.
Make a bitch go crazy. I don't know which one of these my baby. Bust out AP, cold spot bullets in your head like KD. Bust it, bitch go bust it. And I had 10 pints with me in Russia.
Hey everyone.
Derek Carty, welcome to a formerly GPP Bro show, but this is now a safe space for the cash game grinders like yourself.
Oh, I'm happy to hear it. I mean, because I'm a cash game guy, so I couldn't swim with those kind of GPP sharks. This is where I belong.
That's right. That's right. And this is, this is a safe space for all of us here this week. Derek and I did this show last year. Week 17 was cash game week. It went well. I felt like I absorbed a lot of knowledge from your tutelage, and I'm ready to run it back this year.
I'm excited to hear it. I've been seeing you tweeting out all week. So you said you're putting in 180 hours this week.
Correct.
How many hours are you at right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of mathematicians have pointed out that there's actually only 168 hours in a week. And I said, yes, I know. So I am allowing kind of 8 hours for myself of non-grinding. It basically amounts to about like an hour and 7 minutes a night of sleep. Gotcha. And other than that, I have been focusing on my cash game shell. I know some people are going to say, well, weren't you out, snow blowing earlier? And actually I had paid someone to just read off the points per dollar projections for every single player's salary on the DraftKings slate. So I was actually listening to those while I was snow blowing and snow plowing.
I mean, that's dedication. That's what you have to do to succeed in the cash game streets.
I know. And that's the thing. How many hours a week would you say you normally put in?
Oh, I'm easily over 180 hours a week. Easily. I mean, you have to.
All jokes aside, I mean, updating projections for every single player in the NFL, much less on week 18, the ultimate chaos week in a year of total chaos. I mean, that has to be incredibly intense for you.
Yeah, it is. I mean, for a normal, casual player, it's easy to kind of look at projections and kind of see where guys are. But if you're making the projections, it does take actually a lot of work to go through, figure out the usage, the roles, and how things are shifting, especially in a year with so many like COVID injuries where, Deontay Johnson's out. So what's going to happen to Chase Claypool and Ray McLeod and like that kind of thing definitely takes up some time.
For sure. And that's why this week is for the grinders. It's a celebration of how hard you work. I feel like these GPP bros can swoop in Sunday at 12 and just be like, oh, I'll just play whoever I want because it's okay in a GPP. But the true grinders have to be on top of the entire slate and know the best plays.
Yeah, they really do. That's what cash games are all about is play the best plays. And it's easier said than done.
That's right. Real quick here. So GA is wondering how many head-to-heads I have received. I'm trying to pull this up right now on DraftKings. I am accepting all invites. You can send them to RevertZTop. The link is in my Twitter bio. I have received 127 head-to-heads in almost to $2,000 in head-to-head action. Derek, how many head-to-head invites do you normally get on a week?
I get very few invites, which I'd love to get some. I mean, I put games out there. If people want to find my games, they can find them. So I don't get a lot of invites. I also don't encourage it as much as I probably should, because I feel like a lot of guys who get those invites, they're getting really soft action through them. So I need to figure out how to make that happen for myself.
What's your username? Let's pump it here. Where do you want the invite sent?
My username is Derek Carty. Not hard to find me.
That is easy. I am just going to make this very easy here. Please scoop me, bro. RevertZTop. and Derek Carty here on DraftKings. Now, have you heard, and this is something I kind of have to feel out here before I know how much I can trust you. Have you heard about our high stakes head to head between the Tilt Space guys, Michael Leone, Joe Holka, and I, versus the Gilcast bros, Nemo, Nate Noling, Sammy Reed, and Davis Nitmatic? Have you heard about this?
So I sort of heard. I don't know all the specifics though. So tell me what's going on with this.
Yeah, so we challenged them to basically a high stakes head to head where the 3 Tilt Space guys make a single cash game lineup and the 3 Gilcast guys make a cash game lineup. We're going to play it. I believe we settled on $1,000, and we were all excited about this except Davis. Davis was poo-pooing it, didn't want to just run into the ETR optimal or whatever. But do you have any kind of thoughts if you had to handicap this head to head? I know you're in the DMs with Nate Noling on Sunday mornings. Are you siding with your guy here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest reason I would have to side with you guys is because, especially if Davis is like opposed to doing this, it's got to be because he doesn't want Nate to bully him into playing like Allen Robinson or Devin Singletary or somebody gross that is a good math play. And so they're not going to play the good math plays. They're going to do something like to go against that. So I'm on your side this week.
Yeah, and we'll get into some more specifics, but I do think they're going to run into a lot of those situations. We have actually requested that they record their pre-lock build session with the 3 of them. I feel like that is going to be ripe. And then, of course, we will have the Tilt Space Sunday at 6 on ETR's channel. And then I will be joining the Gilcast Sunday night to recap Cash Game Week. So, yes, all kinds of action flying. On the whole, how has your year been going? How has the Blitz been doing? What have you how have things been shaken out for you?
Yeah, it's been a really good year for the Blitz, especially. Like projections have been I feel like really spot on. In my own games, there's been a lot of just like not ending up on the right plays together or like the wrong side of the 2v2, like the usual like cash game like excuse type stuff, but like actually so it's been fine. I've been doing fine. It's been a good year. It hasn't been like an amazing year.
Yeah. What do you have just kind of general cash game tips for me? Obviously, I'm accepting a lot of head-to-heads. We also have, I should mention, Derek, and I feel like this is unprecedented because a lot of the sites, they'll partner with DraftKings. They'll have a rake-free GPP tournament. Sometimes it's 3 max. Even around here, we had a single entry tournament. Do you think, because this week I requested a rake-free $10 double up, 400 entries, rake-free $10. Is this unprecedented? Could this be the first ever rake-free double up listener league contest?
Yeah, it might be.
Okay, you heard it here first. And so everyone needs to get in that. I think I pinned it in the chat. The link's also down below. How much are they normally raking one of these double ups, would you say, Derek?
Probably like 12%, depending on the stakes, somewhere in that area.
There you go. You heard it from him. You need to get in your double up money in a rake-free manner. I will say, Derek, this hasn't been filling up quite as fast as my tournament free rolls here. And so I'm worried that not everyone knows it's cash game week.
That might be it. Or people, being a cash game grinder, you gotta be a man. You gotta man up. You got to put out your best plays against the other guy's best plays. And I feel like a lot of people don't have the stones to do that. So maybe that's what it is. That's what it comes down to.
I agree with this take. I think people are scared. I think people are, they're so used to just kind of the easy GPP play that they're not willing to kind of enter the, mental arena that cash game, requires. So I did just pull it up here. We only have 85 out of 400 in this incredibly rake-free double up. Look at the payout structure on this. Is this not the flattest payout structure you've ever seen? 1 to 200th get $20.
That is the flattest payout structure I've ever seen.
It's honestly beautiful. I'm getting a little hard just looking at that payout structure. Turn your $10 into 20. Everyone says this is an up-only market, whatever. There is no safer bet than turning $10 into $20 like you can in the Deposit Kingdom Weekly League. Derek, are you have you been parking your money anywhere else other than head-to-head cash games?
Are we talking like GPPs or NFT type stuff?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, because I had said on Twitter that, the markets were actually crashing a little bit in the past, 48 hours. And luckily I had moved mine to the ultimate stable coin, which is cash games. So I'm just curious how someone like you kind of allocates your capital. Do you go 100% cash games?
Yeah, I'm pretty much 100% cash games. Sometimes I'll throw in a single entry GPP lineup. So maybe like 95-5 or something like that. But I'm pretty exclusively a cash game guy.
Yeah. And this is actually, Brandon mentioned something that I kind of want to address. He says cash games just means play more chalk, right? Do you get the feeling that chalk is just used as a pejorative too much? I hear the GPP bros say it and there's almost disdain.
There is
in their
disdain when
voice.
they say it. You can hear it in their voice. Yeah.
What is their issue with the best plays?
I don't know. I feel like they think identifying the best plays is easy. Yeah. So to answer the question though, like playing cash games doesn't mean playing chalk. Like a lot of times chalk is the best plays, but not always. Sometimes chalk is bad. Sometimes it's this groupthink type of thing where it's just like not actually really an optimal play. And sometimes there's plays that should be chalk that people just miss. And so there is, a little bit of an art to it.
Would you say it's more of a, if you had, because I know the Guildcast bros, they talk about being an art versus a science. If you had to assign percentages on cash game art versus science, what would that percentage allocation be across those two?
I do think it's probably like 90% science, 10% art.
So it is technically more of a science than an art?
Technically. I mean, if we really want to get into the weeds, into the numbers about it, then yeah, I guess.
But that 10% is the most valuable 10% of that entire equation.
It is. That's what separates the really great cash game bros.
What do you say to people when they say, and even cash game bros like Davis Maddock will say, we're just all going to play a 1v1, your defense versus mine, a 2v2, your tight end and defense versus mine. What do you say to kind of the naysayers who say that this game is just stripped down to coin flipping a 1v1 or 2v2?
I mean, that's true if you're playing against like all of your competition is just like the sharpest possible players. Yeah, for the most part, it's going to be, 2v2s, some weeks, maybe it's like, 3 or 4. But you're not always playing against the sharpest players. You are playing against a lot of weak players. If I go through my head-to-heads on any given week, I can find a whole bunch of guys who are just playing stuff they have no business playing, guys who are just throwing away their money. So there is edge based on that. And, you try not to play the sharpest players where you're just, 1v1ing a defense. Then maybe that's not an ideal scenario.
Now, I feel like this question, when they say asking for a friend, I do truly feel like I might be asking for a lot of friends. What kind of traps do you think there might be for GPP bros who are transitioning to maybe playing their first cash game lineup of the year? Whether that's mentality shift, process shift, what are the things they should be looking out for to make sure they get it in good this week?
Yeah, it's tough to put myself in the headspace of a GPP bro because that's not me. But I would say don't be afraid to play chalk. You don't have to jam the chalk just because it's the chalk. Like you really just want to play the best plays. But yeah, like you really do need to change your mindset. You're not trying to be different here. That's not the point.
Right. And what other things should be looking out for? I mean, I assume, on Sundays after inactives come out at 11:30, you're rerunning, updating all your projections. I assume you're rerunning optimals at that point. Like how much of your shell is intact heading up to inactives and how often is your shell getting, dare I say, flipped on its head?
Yeah, it's always going to depend on the week. If something crazy happens during inactives, somebody is out that we weren't expecting, things are going to change. It happens maybe, I don't know, I'd say 3 times a year where something really dramatic happens where like you're just scrambling and you're playing something completely different than you were before. Going into Sunday, you're always going to have a few guys that you basically know are going to be in your lineup pretty much no matter what. And then it's just kind of figuring out the last couple pieces around them. Even this week, which is a really gross week, there are probably 3 or 4 guys that you kind of know you're playing regardless. But you never know. I mean, especially in a COVID year, like things can get, the slate can get flipped on its head pretty easily.
Yeah, I think we're all going to have to be, glued to our seats on Sunday morning, waiting for those Schefter bombs, waiting for Carty to update the blitz projections. This is a good question here. JWYKE says, do you guys have any pregame chalk rituals a la LeBron James you'd recommend? I have talked to my wife about allowing me to do a chalk toss in the living room before I go to set my lineup. But do you have anything like that in your household?
No, I can't say I do, but the chalk toss sounds like a pretty good idea. Maybe I got to look into that.
Yeah, I do think it is. I'm actually going to make a note on that because that seems like a good content idea. Chalk toss. I could have done it with snow, maybe. Greg saying I need that Cash King hoodie. Here it is. You can get it in the store. The link's down below. Overzet.myshopify.com. Cash Game hoodie, incredibly comfy. Look, Derek, I'll tell you this: if I win 56% or more of my head-to-heads this week, I'm going to send you a complimentary Cash Game King hoodie as a thank you for your services.
Well, I appreciate that. And if you don't win 50% of your head-to-heads, I'm probably going to have to buy one because those things are awesome.
Yes, you will. You will have to buy one. I'll be very mad that you led me astray and that my 1 week of playing cash games went poorly. But that's not a scenario we are even going to consider. I will be sending you one of these. How many times this year, because I've heard Levitan talk about, like, Levitan loves bragging that, like, he doesn't play the ETR optimal. You know, he's Mr. IKB. I'm going to bully it. I'm going to just play the best plays. I'm going to out information you. How many times would you say this year, or even on the whole, you just play the blitz optimal? The numbers say it. I'm doing that. So
I'd say most of the time I'm playing the optimal. And part of that is because I'm the one building the projections. Like, you know, I'm not sure exactly what Levitan's involvement with the ETR projections is, but like, if he has that kind of information that he doesn't think is in the projections, put it in the projections. That's what I'm doing. So like, that's why I'm sticking to the projections mostly, because whatever information I think I have is going into them. Now, I'm not under any illusions where I think like the top optimal is like the best lineup or the only lineup you can play. Like, it's the same. Like, if you run 50 optimals, the difference between the number 1 and number 50 is going to be like 1 point. You know, it's going to be like a 2v2 or a 3v3. Like, they're all the same basically in the long run in terms of their expected value. So generally I'll look at the top optimals. I'll find one, you know, maybe that I think is a little bit better. But they project basically the same. So, you know, I'm always with one of the top optimals.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, you got to do it for the brand, right? I mean, I remember the week, was it 2 years ago, where the Blitz Optimal shipped the Spy tournament, and it was like a 10 lineup train at the top of the Spy.
That was a couple of years ago. It finished like 18th in the Millie Maker that week, and like shipped the Spy and a bunch of like single entry stuff. That was a crazy week.
And that actually, I want to address something here. You know, I hear a lot of these, and I do see a lot of the high stakes cash game grinders. They'll toss their lineups in these small field, single entry, 3 max tournaments. The Thunderdome is basically just a glorified cash game contest, unless your name's Mike Leone. I just want it on the record. I will not be tossing my cash game lineups into any of these dirty, top heavy GPPs. I just forget that shit. I'm playing it in the contest where it matters. Mono-y-mono, head-to-head. I mean, do you toss your cash game lineup into these tournaments? And I apologize if I offended you, but it offends me just thinking about it.
Yeah, I can see why it would offend you. I do throw my cash lineup into. I know. I'm sorry. But here's the thing. I'm not treating it like a GPP. I'm not going in with a GPP mentality where I'm hoping my cash lineup is going to win. I'm basically treating it as an extension of a cash game where I know my first place equity is very, very low, but my min cash equity is probably very high because GPP bros throw a bunch of trash into GPPs a lot, hoping they're going to hit it big, but it's just a dead lineup right out of the gate. And so there's a lot of dead money in those. And your min cash equity, I think, is positive by doing that.
What do you think? I mean, what I would say to these GPP bros is like, just go down to the gas station and buy a Powerball ticket. I mean, like, why even spend the time pretending like you have an edge? I mean, these guys throw it in the Millie Maker, and they'd be better off going down to the gas station and getting a Powerball ticket. No comment? Wow. I thought you were a true cash game grinder like me.
I'm a cash game grinder, but I'm also a businessman. I sell projections that people use to play GPPs. I don't want to discourage GPP use if that's your thing. Like GPPs are great if you're using a strong process, strong projections like the Blitz. Go right ahead. If you're just kind of throwing something in there, you're not using projections, then yeah, go get a lottery ticket.
All right, I'm going to put on the ticker here what Derek Carty just said. Essentially, Republicans use optimizers too. All right, I get it. You're a politician. Shill the Blitz projection system here. Are you going to have any deals for the playoffs? How can people get access to these? Both, Republicans, Democrats, GPP bros, cash game grinders.
Yeah, over at RotoGrinders, rotogrinders.com/the-blitz. We have weekly subscriptions, monthly subscriptions. So, it should be very easy to give it a shot, try it out throughout the playoffs and for week 18.
That's right. And we are going to set our sights now on week 18. I know this is a very personal question. And I've even been a little upset about how forward people have been and kind of presumptuous in asking me this. So I'm not going to ask any specifics. I do just want to say, do you have a current shell for week 18?
I'm a cash game bro. Of course I have a shell.
Okay. And now talk to me through the process of the shell, because I've heard, there's some of these guys, the salary's open and they'll just go click a bunch of buttons just to get in like a true shell. I mean, this thing, there's nothing in it. The crab is long gone. But then there'll be some people that do kind of like a little by feel, just kind of scroll through the salaries, click some guys. Where on your kind of that scale of just getting in a true shell versus a shell with a little bit of heart, where do you fall on that spectrum?
Yeah, so at the start of the week when I'm just signing up for games, I'll just click buttons. It doesn't matter who's in it. I haven't even looked at projections yet. Maybe projections haven't been run. So I just click whoever and then grab some action. Throughout the week though, I'd say it's more of like a mental shell. Like as I'm running projections, I'm looking at optimal lineups. I'm kind of, aware of who the Blitz likes, who I think is going to be in my lineup. So I'll probably have, some idea of at least a core few plays that are in the lineup. By this point in the week, and then, some of the guys that I'm considering, in the other spots.
Yeah. What else goes into kind of your process for how often you're updating your projections, then rerunning optimals, updating your shell? I mean, for instance, I just come across the news desk, Ronald Jones has officially been ruled out for week 18.
Oh,
would you say the slate has been flipped on its head?
Yeah, I'd say the slate might just have been flipped on its head.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so I imagine Keyshawn Vaughn and Le'Veon Bell are cheap. We'll kind of have to figure out who of those we have the most interest in, but that's going to be interesting.
Keyshawn Vaughn is 5,300. Davis Maddock did put him in our Swolecast cash game shell on Wednesday. Davis reading the tea leaves there. I mean, I was looking at the Blitz optimal before, and this is going to change. So hopefully you don't mind me giving away
go ahead.
the milk, and then people don't buy the cow. But Jonathan Taylor, Gibson, and Singletary were the running backs. I'm guessing Singletary's probably going to get booted out for Vaughn here, maybe, or Gibson.
Yeah, it's definitely possible at this point. Vaughn 5,300 is not like cheap, but it's probably cheap enough where if we think he's going to get the bulk of the work here, then he becomes really appealing.
How do you think about this stuff? Because I completely understand, right? You're gonna put in the inputs for target share and carry share for Keyshawn Vaughn. He's gonna project solid. This is where that kind of the IKB stuff comes in. Like, we know that the Bucs have been very disappointed with Keyshawn Vaughn. They've been pretty reluctant to use him. We also know that these running backs in Tampa have an extremely short lease with both Tom Brady and Bruce Arians. You miss one blitz pickup, you're done for the game. Yeah. And we know they have a veteran, like you said, in Le'Veon Bell, who probably isn't going to miss a lot of blitz pickups. He's probably also not going to run more than 2 yards a carry. So how do you think about that? Let's just say systemic risk in playing Keyshawn Vaughn, even though the projections show him as a solid play.
Yeah, I think it comes down to extent. Like, we can understand when a projection is more fragile than other ones. Ronald Jones, even last week, was a perfect example. Like, we knew that the Bucs were not really big on Ronald Jones either. We know what they do when guys fumble the ball or they miss a block or whatever. And so if a guy is like showing up in every single optimal lineup, and if you exclude him, you lose like 5 points, like it doesn't matter if the projection's fragile, like you still have to play a guy like that. If it's like a closer call, where it might be this week a closer call, maybe Keyshawn Vaughn, you run 10 optimal lineups, he's in 5 of them, and Singletary's in 5 others. In that case, maybe I just lean towards Singletary.
Now, you also just described a scenario that I know is incredibly taboo around cash game circles. Would you ever split? And I'm going to say this right now. I'm running one fucking lineup this week. I would never do this, but I have heard about splitting cash game lineups. Have you ever done it? Would you ever consider it? And under what circumstances would you do it?
Yeah, I have done it. I certainly would consider doing it again. I know there's people there's one user who talks all the time. He takes the top 20 optimals from the blitz and splits his action among all of them. He said he's had 2 unprofitable weeks this year doing it, like, which is cool. I love hearing that kind of thing.
20 shells. I would need 300 hours in the week to manage 20 shells.
Yeah. But the thing is, like I kind of said before, like there really isn't a difference between the first optimal and the 20th optimal, like they're all the same. You're swapping a couple of guys out, and there's not really a practical difference in a 1/10 of a point of projection. Like there's really not. We can pretend that we have that kind of precision, but we don't. They're all basically the same plays. And so it just kind of mitigates your risk a little bit. So I don't have a problem if someone wants to approach it that way. That's like the ultimate, like low floor, low variance cash game approach. I'll usually play one lineup, sometimes 2, but I do think there is something to it a little bit, because, if you have two cheap 3K wide receivers that you're deciding between on a given week as your last piece, and they project, 0.05 of a point apart, like what is really the difference? Like maybe you have a lean between one of them, but they're basically the same guy. So split your exposure and then you don't have to worry about it.
All right, here's a question for you. And this is a hypothetical kind of a prisoner's dilemma type of scenario. If say that before lock, one of your opponents who sent you a head-to-head, and let's say you could find out whether because of a bug in the DraftKings system, whether because they sent you a screenshot and you could trust them, and they have the exact same lineup as you. And that lineup happens to be, as you think, the highest projected, most optimal lineup. Are you making a pivot?
I'm probably not making a pivot in that case.
That's what I like to hear. Explain.
Well, the thing is, if I don't make a pivot, we're gonna split it. I'm not gonna lose any money. I'm not gonna gain any money. You get your rake back.
Oh, you do get your rake back in that scenario. Okay.
Yeah, so you get your rake back. So I'd much rather compete against somebody who's not going to play a lineup very similar to me. So like I'll just that game basically doesn't exist for me that week. If I switch off, maybe it's a 50-50, a coin flip kind of thing, whether I win or lose. But instead, if I just kind of stick with it, then that game doesn't exist, and then I'm competing against a lot of weaker lineups instead of a really good lineup.
Yeah. That makes sense. Greg, this question is so embarrassing to ask in front of my guests. Do we, yes. So at first I thought you said, are we sorting by ceiling projection? And I almost threw up in my mouth. I mean, this week we are sorting by floor projection. Okay, Greg, that's what we're doing here. And I think Carty just said it, that generally when you look across all of the optimal lineups in the blitz, that it's, at most maybe across 100 lineups, you're sacrificing 5 points, right? Towards the end of that run, or even less than that.
Yeah, it's going to depend on the week. If you go 100 lineups, it could easily be less than 5 points.
Yeah. And I can do it because I had pulled up here. Let's see. So like the top lineup right now had 155.89 points, and the bottom one out of 100 has 152.43. So that was the spread.
It's like 3.5 points.
Yes. All right. One other big thing before we dive into, I guess this is kind of specifics for week 18. How much are you monitoring both team motivation and these individual player incentive motivations, whether because of bonuses in their contract or, getting to certain milestones for yardage? Are you tracking these things?
I'm aware of them. I wouldn't say I'm tracking them. Like a lot of people in week 18 love to put, I think, undue weight on motivation, like as if players aren't just inherently motivated because they're high level professional athletes that have monetary motivation every single time they take the field. Like, why would we expect a team just because, they don't have motivation to get like a playoff seed or whatever? Why would we expect their players to not be trying? Like, they all want to make money. They all want to inherently like succeed because they just have that innately because they're high level professional athletes. But like, you're not going to not try in week 18 because your team is out of it. You want to try for yourself and for your next contract, if nothing else. So like, the motivation thing, I think, is mostly nonsense. And we see it every year. Oh, this team's got motivation. They have to win this game to get into the playoffs. And they lose half the time. Like, it really just doesn't mean a whole lot. I think the only part of it that really matters is whether or not guys are going to actually play. Like, if the Packers are going to sit Devontae Adams for half the game this week, well, that matters. He's not going to be on the field. That kind of thing. Otherwise, though, like team level motivation stuff, I think is mostly just narrative nonsense noise. Player contract incentives, I think, can matter if there's actually a reason to believe that the player will be able to influence his chances of, getting extra volume to make it work or something like that.
So as of right now, the way I'm hearing it, you have not kind of overruled the projections or bullied them at all to factor in any of these incentives.
No, only where guys might not play the whole game. That's
okay.
That's it.
And on that front, are there any, what teams are you monitoring? Obviously the Packers don't have incentive to play the full game. Are there any others that you've been tweaking the inputs on?
Yeah, like I'm trying to figure out what's going on with like the Bucks, with the Bengals. There's a few teams like that where we don't really know if they're gonna give it a full, 100% go or not. Where like they kind of have sort of something to play for, but like not a lot. Like a lot needs to go right, kind of thing. So that those are the ones that are a little trickier.
And I do think that is one of the trickier things. We already were talking about Keyshawn Vaughn. I feel like on the Bengals, Samaje Perine, who was in my early shell on Monday when that news came out. How do you think about that, where it's like they're not, the starter? It's not like they necessarily need to rest them for the playoffs, but the overall team motivation might not quite be there. Maybe they split touches more, yet the volume that you're going to project for Perine and Keyshawn Vaughn is going to be really good.
Yeah, I think in a case like them where it's not like their true starter, I don't think we have to worry about their workload as much. If anything, it might help them a little bit. If the Bucks decide, okay, we're, gonna rest Tom Brady and Mike Evans and Gronk in the third or fourth quarter or whatever, maybe they lean more on the run game. They lean more on Vaughn or whoever, just because like they don't have to worry as much about him getting hurt because, they have, Ronald Jones coming back presumably, or like whatever it may be.
Yeah. All right. I think we should start diving into the slate. I'd like to go position by position this week. First of all, Derek, permission in certain instances to screen share the blitz projections. If you say no, I completely understand.
Yeah, no, go right ahead.
Okay. All right. Let's start at quarterback. And I first want to just ask a question. Do you have a dome boner for Taysom Hill this week?
Oh, I 100% do. Anyone who's used the blitz for any length of time knows that the blitz makes a big deal out of weather because mathematically weather matters. Like I've studied it. I've quantified exactly how much every additional mile per hour of wind and temperature and everything else impacts player performance. And wind tends to matter a lot. In a dome, there's no wind. And so guys that are in a dome, the blitz will generally like more than it will like them outside the dome, and generally a little bit more than the consensus will like them.
Yeah. And so I know when I ran the blitz optimal earlier, I ran 100 lineups and Taysom was in about 40% of them, which, speaks to a little ambiguity for the optimal cash game quarterback this week. Tyler Huntley also showing up in a decent amount of these. But then the other thing that's kind of interesting, when you sort by fantasy points per dollar, Derek Carr is actually jumping out as the best points per dollar play. So how do you kind of think through that? Because, Derek Carr is even, $600 cheaper.
Pete, we're cash game guys. We got to know who's on the slate.
Oh shit! I didn't filter. This is your issue with the blitz. It doesn't default to the main slate.
It should default to the main slate.
Derek, I am telling you right now, and I'm a big fan of the blitz, but I opened it up and it says all games. Okay, that's on me. I am sorry. I'm sorry. All right, here we go. Now we're back to sorted correctly. I mean, what a gaffe for a cash game grinder like myself. All right, so Taysom Hill, Trey Lance, Tyler Huntley. Kyler Murray does look like the pay up option at quarterback. Are there scenarios where we get enough value that you would consider getting up to him?
As of right now, I don't think there's enough value to make it happen. I think it's possible. You know, we get a couple COVID cases, we get some clarity on some situations with teams resting their players. You know, let's say tomorrow Green Bay comes out and they say, you know, Devontae Adams is only going to play a quarter this week, and Alan Lazard and MVS, you know, they're only going to play a quarter. Well, now maybe we can think about playing a 3K Juwan Winifrey or St. Brown or something like that. So if we wind up with a couple guys like that, you know, maybe Robbie Anderson gets ruled out and Brandon Zylstra now is like one of only 2 healthy wide receivers on Carolina. Maybe then we can think about paying up, but otherwise I don't see a way to really make it work that feels good.
So it does seem like obviously Taysom is projecting well. We have the dome boner, all that. Then the big question, then it looks like that's going to come into play is, will those $500 or $600, $700 be meaningful enough on this slate to where you'd be incentivized to go down to a Trey Lance or a Tyler Huntley? Do you think that's even a conversation, or is Taysom Hill as of right now a lock button?
I think it's definitely a conversation. I'd prefer to get to Taysom if I can, but I think Huntley and Lance are viable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Huntley has just shown both an incredibly high floor and high ceiling here. What do you think about this matchup in general with the Steelers? I feel like historically we all have like, oh, these are the gross divisional games, but we've also seen these teams play in pretty high scoring kind of shootouts as well.
Yeah. I think matchup wise, it certainly seems fine. It's a low wind spot. It looks like 3 mile an hour wind in this, which is nice. Decent pace, one of the above average, fast paced game this week. So it's a good spot for Huntley. We know he can score points with his legs. The price is nice.
Yeah. But as of right now, if you had to submit a cash game lineup for week 18, no changes, you're putting Taysom in that?
Yeah, as of right now, I'd pick Taysom.
Yeah. Taysom, incredibly nice floor. We love to see that. Atlanta, what have they, I mean, they've been awful against QBs this year, right?
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta's a good matchup. He's in the dome. And I'm just a big fan of Taysom in general. I think he's not actually even a bad quarterback in terms of throwing.
Yeah. I do just need to say something, and I hate putting people in the chat like on blast and stuff, but Brandon, I do appreciate all your contributions. If I see the word ceiling again in the chat, I will put you in a 5-minute timeout. That's just not what we're doing around here. If you want to talk about Taysom's floor, which I'm happy to do, Carty has him here with a 12.3 floor projection. Looks incredibly nice. Actually, feature request, Carty, do you think we could get a fantasy points per floor kind of column? Because I think that would help my process out a lot.
Yeah. I'll have to look into that. I'll see what I can do.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Let's head over to the running back position. This is, of course, is where we're going to see the most kind of chaos on this slate. It is kind of interesting to me that right at the top, as far as a points per dollar standpoint, we are seeing 3 of the more expensive running backs. Najee was kind of priced up for a stretch there where he just didn't project well, but now coming off of that massive game, 7,200, it seems like you're kind of coming around on Harris in this spot.
Yeah, it looks like it's not actually sorted by point per dollar. I think when you switch the filter, you might have to resort. Wow. Najee is kind of up there, but
okay. Whew, I'm struggling with my cash game grinding navigation today.
Yeah, so I mean, with Deontay Johnson out, like, we have to think they're going to lean a little bit more on Najee, and it's a decent spot, but mostly like he's just that like true bell cow kind of guy that there aren't a lot of them in football anymore, but he gets 85% of the carries, 15% of the targets, like just week in and week out. So even on a bad team, that kind of volume is always going to translate to a good projection.
Do you see any scenarios where you would potentially be playing two high price running backs this week, or do you think it's going to almost be impossible?
I think it's going to be really difficult. I wouldn't say it's impossible. I think there's probably scenarios where it could happen. We get, a really cheap wide receiver open up or something like that. I could see playing Taylor and Najee, but I think it's unlikely.
Yeah. And that's been the trend this entire season, right? Where we've gotten lots of solid running back plays from like 4,800 to 6K. But I actually want to ask you about that because I can't tell if this is just recency bias, but to me, it feels like the cheap, viable pump play wide receivers like sub 4,400 have been like non-existent this year.
Yeah, they really have been few and far between. And it feels like when we have gotten them, they have not done what projections have expected them to do. I think I've played Jamison Crowder twice this year, and I hate myself for it.
Yeah, Davis actually asked on Twitter to ask you about Jamison Crowder. He has been a lightning rod as far as the cash game discourse from what I've seen from afar.
Yeah, he's been brutal. And it's tough because like he's been a math play. Like, yeah, like he's a jet and you don't want to play a jet. But when like every single projection system says he's the top point per dollar wide receiver and he opens up getting to like Jonathan Taylor or Cooper Kupp or whatever, like I've played him a couple times and it hasn't been fun.
Well, this is the thing, and Pepe saying this in the chat, and I agree. You were directionally accurate. We saw Berrios come out and just look like a total alpha, and you basically we all thought Jamison Crowder was the stud slot wide receiver on the Jets, and we just actually had the wrong guy.
What Berrios has done has been incredible because Crowder is running 3 times as many routes as Berrios, and Berrios is just out there getting the targets anyway. So, last week Berrios was as close to a lock as we've had all year for anybody. So it's been really nice with Crowder not playing.
Yeah, and we'll get to wide receivers in a sec. I want to finish up here on running back. Obviously, I'm guessing, and I don't know if you're able to eyeball this based on the projection, but do you assume Keyshawn Vaughn will jump up in these top 4 or 5 points per dollar plays?
Yeah, I would think he'll probably be somewhere in the top 5. I don't know if he'll be top 2 or 3 because I do think you have to assume Bell's going to get a decent amount of work too.
Yeah. The thing that's interesting about these plays is when I look at Antonio Gibson and Devin Singletary, the cash game king in me, I don't feel this warm sensation of high floor comfort when I look at those names. We know Antonio Gibson has often lost a lot of pass catching work. Of course, JD McKissic not in the picture. Devin Singletary has been yanked in and out of the lineup as times. Does that give you any pause with these guys? Or are you willing to kind of click here and just trust the inputs?
As of right now, what's the alternative? Like, who else are you going to play? Like, they don't feel like, all-time great cash plays, but given the context of the slate, we don't have anyone better. Singletary's been getting like almost all the work lately, even in the goal line. And it's a great matchup for him. He's against the Jets. They're like 3 touchdown favorites. It's like 20 miles an hour wind. So they should be giving him plenty of work.
I feel like another guy who was in my early week cash shell was Sony Michel. Of course, we get the reports that Cam Akers is going to be activated. We had the Sean McVay quote kind of ambiguous saying how much work, how much run he could get here. I'm curious, can you let us know kind of the inputs that you're giving Cam Akers here? And if Cam Akers wasn't in the picture like he was last week where Sony Michel got every running back touch, do you think Sony Michel would be one of the top running back options?
Yeah, if Akers all of a sudden doesn't play, then Sony's awesome. I think I'm giving Akers maybe like 20% of the carries, 4 or 5% of the targets, which isn't like a lot, but when otherwise you'd be giving it almost all to Sony Michel, it does make a pretty big difference.
Yeah, I'm just kind of sorting here, and it does look like, you're giving Cam Akers a 4-point fantasy projection here as far as touches. That looks like a couple of targets, couple of rush attempts there. So enough to meaningfully make Sony Michel less of a slam dunk. I still think, to me, if there was an IKB slot on this slate, it would be saying Akers isn't going to be a factor.
Yeah, I'd like to think that's the case. And if that is the case, I mean, even 4 points for Akers, you give that to Sony Michel. Now he's projecting for 20 points, and he's like the top point per dollar guy.
Yeah. So that's an interesting one for me. And I kind of want to dig into a little bit more of the Akers situation because, not necessarily right now, but just in general, because there was also the stuff where part of the reason they activated him was this kind of act of goodwill with his activating him or making him eligible for this pension thing with the team. And then their hands were kind of forced with Darrell Henderson going out, that they just needed another body. So I do agree. It does seem like he's going to get a couple touches, but to me, this still could be a spot where Sony Michel gets 90 to 95% of them.
Yeah, he certainly could.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting to monitor. I would prefer to play Sony Michel over a Gibson in Singletary. I think, I think my shell right now, just off the top of my head, in my perfect world, I think my shell would be JT, Sony Michel, and Keyshawn Vaughn as of right now in my dream world.
I can see that being viable for sure, especially if you really don't think Akers is going to do anything.
Yeah, and this is where we're going to really put the pedal to the metal and have to I'm going to start watching some Sean McVay pressers. I might hire a body language expert, Derek, to just kind of see if they can kind of pick up on anything based on his quotes,
I mean, that's a great idea. I don't know why I haven't looked into that already for the Blitz.
I mean, we got to think, the markets are getting so efficient. People are getting better and better at DFS, in the same way, like I'm sure you're talking to your pal, Kevin Roth. Hey, let me know what's going on with these weather situations. Why not have a body language expert to watch all of these press conferences? I think that could be the next frontier of grinding.
That makes so much sense. I'm putting that on the list.
Brandon, I'm sorry. Please don't yell at me. All we're going to do is play the best plays. And I'm telling you right now, Keyshawn Vaughn might be one of the best plays, and you're just going to have to cope with that. All right, let's head over to wide receiver. I need to make sure I get sorted correctly here. This is a fun one right at the top. And I will also say, in previous years, Derek, when I would go and sort by wide receivers, do you miss Michael Thomas? Because Michael Thomas used to be the goddamn king of the blitz.
Yeah, Michael Thomas was the Blitz loved Michael Thomas so much. It would project Michael Thomas like 5 points higher than any other projection system had him week in and week out. And he would be like 20% owned in cash. And it would just be right every single time. And it was just free money playing Michael Thomas. It was great. I miss him so much.
I know. And this would have been the spot. Week 18 at home, in the Dome Boner, that would have been nice. Now we got to talk about Allen Robinson here at the top. We were mentioning not a lot of salary saving options at wide receiver. Allen Robinson having a really disappointing year. Is Allen Robinson in play for our cash game lineups this week?
Yeah, he is. Wide receivers disgusting this week. And Allen Robinson's my first guy in. He's a guy that is in my shell. As of right now, I'm 100% playing Allen Robinson.
Wow. Breaking news, Derek Carty revealing a lock button play in his shell. This is incredible. Now talk to me about, is it because the confidence from last week, the 6 targets, or, when he has been playing, he has been, it looks like earning about 5 to 6 targets a game.
Yeah. He's a guy who's still getting 20% of the targets. It's not like what he used to get, but that's still a good number. And the matchup's really good. Like, he's going into a dome. He's facing this below average Minnesota secondary. He's only 4K. And as much as I think people are surprised when I say it, but Justin Fields is on the COVID list. So we're getting Andy Dalton again. And that's a good thing for Allen Robinson. Like, I love Justin Fields. I love his long-term upside. Andy Dalton is the better throwing quarterback right now. And he's actually the Bears are going to have more passing volume with Dalton than they would with Fields, because teams run more with rookie quarterbacks. The Bears have run more with Fields this year. And a lot of the pass attempts are going to turn into scrambles with Fields, where that's not really a risk with Dalton. So there's going to be pretty decent volume here. There's going to be a chance for efficiency. And he's only 4K on a slate where, name one guy on this list that you feel comfortable playing this week. There's not a single guy.
That's what I was going to say too. The GPP bros can, get all upset about Allen Robinson. And I do think I am going to put Allen Robinson on my Sunday AM thumbnail cover just to fully trigger everyone. But if you're not playing Allen Robinson at 4K, who are you playing down in that range to save salary? Are you getting to Robbie Anderson? Is that what you're doing? I mean, I just don't know how else you are saving money at wide receiver outside of Allen Robinson.
Well, that's exactly it. We have a bunch of these like questionable 3K guys, like playing time issues, like the Green Bay guys or whatever. But really, like, what else are you doing?
Yeah. The chat is mentioning Ray McLeod. Looks like you have him with kind of a middling projection here. Any takes on the Ray McLeod love?
Yeah. I think if you refresh, he's gone up a little since I don't know if that's with the Deontay Johnson update yet. I think Ray McLeod is viable. I'm still not sure about him because like the Steelers are so bad and Ben is so bad. But
oh, he did pop up a little bit.
Yeah, so he's up there a little bit now.
Were you just updating that in real time?
No, that was maybe an hour before the show.
Oh, okay. So I had opened the tab before. I was like, man, if this Giga Brain over here is updating projections while talking to me, I was going to be impressed.
So yeah, like I think he's viable. But again, he's not projecting like amazingly. And part of that just because Ben is terrible. Like he got whatever last week, like 10 targets or 12 targets. And I think he finished with like 6 points.
Yeah.
So like he's definitely in play though, especially on a slate like this.
Yeah. And so one kind of interesting thing, you know, when I'm scrolling through the optimals, all of the top lineups don't have Cooper Kupp in them. What is your thought on that? Because for a lot of people, Cooper Kupp has been the definitive best play all season long. They're in a game that they need to win. He has his incentives. It's a fine matchup. It seems like everything lines up well. Are you going to IKB Cooper Kupp, or as of right now, do you think Cooper Kupp would not be in your cash game lineup?
Yeah, I'm going back and forth on it right now. If you run, I think 10 optimals, he's in like 3 of them. It's prioritizing Jonathan Taylor more than Kupp right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you play Kupp, it's because you're playing both of them, and that's tougher to do. You have to play one of the crappy 3K guys. You have to play Zylstra or Winifrey or someone like that. If Robbie Anderson's out, maybe you just play Zylstra, and maybe the whole thing works.
Yeah. And it does seem like that's the decision you're going to have to make. I mean, just in a macro sense, and I understand the salaries are different. There's other dynamics at play, but it's like, I feel we have way more viable, cheap options at running back than we do at wide receiver. So intuitively, I'd be inclined, let's play Cooper Kupp, wipe out one of these gross wide receiver positions, and then come down and play 3 of the solid mid-tier running back plays that all project well. But the optimizer isn't saying that's the case right now.
No, it's not. Which, you know, it is what it is. You know, Jonathan Taylor projects really, really well this week. And if you want to play the narrative game, you know, I've heard people say that they're going to try to get him to 2,000 yards this week. So that
isn't it 266 yards to get to 2,000?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that seems a little fanciful for my, you know,
it
my
seems
cash
a little
game
fanciful for me too. But if he does do that and you don't have him, you're in trouble. But like he projects really well regardless. So it really is just like playing like, you know, if you don't play Cooper Kupp, like you're playing a couple of, you know, like DJ Moore or DK Metcalf, or like it feels really gross, but like they are high volume receivers. So like it's not like they're projecting terribly. So I think that's kind of just what the optimizer is seeing.
Yeah. All right. Let's before we move to the other positions here, I mean, we're running out of time, which is crazy because I feel like I could do a 4-hour show with you on this slate, Carty, just digging into all the nuts and bolts. The other guys that are showing up in the optimals are DJ Moore and DK Metcalf. And then I do also want to talk about Chase Claypool because he's an interesting one. He is a GPP bro guy who now might be coming over to the non-dark side here with us cash game guys. Talk to me through these other kind of best options at wide receiver.
Yeah, so Claypool's interesting with no Deontay Johnson. Again, he still has to deal with Ben, but he's 5,100. Metcalf is the guy that the Blitz really likes this week, like a 20-point projection, who like you don't want to play because like he hasn't been great this year, but like you go under the hood, he has more touchdowns than he had last year. He has almost as many targets. It's just that the crazy efficiency that we knew was going to regress has regressed. But he still has Russell Wilson throwing him the ball. This is the fastest paced game of the week, so it should be a spiked volume spot. He's in a dome. So like you kind of work through it. And it's like, well, he's actually kind of a good play, especially on a slate where there really aren't a lot of like truly great plays. So I'm as of right now, I think I'm leaning towards playing him, even though it doesn't feel awesome. But I mean, the question really is like, what else are you going to do? Like, I know Justin Jefferson's good and people want to play him, but how are you going to play Taylor and Justin Jefferson? Like, it's just
Right.
it's tough to do. I'd rather just pay up for Kupp if I'm doing that.
I was just going to say, yeah, if you're going to make the high price wide receiver play, then you just want to get to Kupp.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, this is going to be tricky. And also Tyler Lockett not projecting too poorly himself. Yeah, it's interesting with DK Metcalf, like you said. I mean, his touchdown equity has been so good, but we also know touchdowns are, a very volatile, source of production and kind of hard to predict as well.
Yeah.
All right, let's head over to tight end here. I do want to wrap up with just building a very quick shell. But let's talk about the tight end position here. I will sort. I know over in the ETR optimal, at least when I was looking earlier this week, Cole Kmet was popping. Davis was shaming Cole Kmet. Is he kind of the definitive play for you at tight end this week, or do you think it's up for conversation?
I think it's up for conversation, but Kmet is the guy that he's in my shell right now. Kmet's the guy that I feel the most comfortable with.
Yeah. Wait, is this true? Chase Edmonds just got ruled out?
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, he's been seeming kind of on the wrong side of questionable this week in practice. So James Conner, I don't know his price, but assuming he's probably like 5.5 or 6K, he probably becomes a cash lock.
Wow. This is why cash games are so invigorating. We get news like this on the fly. He's 6,300, so he is a little more expensive than the Singletaries and Gibsons. But with this touch total projection and his goal line equity, I mean, this might become a smash.
Yeah, that definitely, dare I say, flips the slate on its head.
Look at this, man. We've been broadcasting for a little under an hour, and we've had this slate flipped on its head twice.
Look at that.
Okay, that's incredible. Tight end, yeah, let's not spend too much time on it. Cole Kmet in play. If you were going to do one of these really gross, kind of punt it off, the John Bates, the Brevin Jordans, your Jonnu Smiths, who is your favorite of those?
I think it would be John Bates, assuming Ricky Seals-Jones is out, which I don't think is guaranteed yet. But assuming Ricky Seals is out, he's going to be the only tight end. We've seen what happens with these tight ends. Like they get, like 15% of the targets for the team, and he's 3K against the Giants. So I think he would be totally fine.
And then the final thing here, let's head over to the defensive portion here. Do we have a lock at defense this week?
It's looking like the Browns right now because Burrow's out, like it's not priced in there. So they look, and they're pretty cheap. So they seem kind of like the obvious play.
Yeah. Brandon, you have so much to learn, man. If you can find some money in the couch cushions to get up to Zach Ertz or Rob Gronk, bless your heart. But the rest of us have to work with a $50,000 salary cap. I do want to wrap up with building a quick shell here. And this is what I'm going to say, Carty. We're going to leave 2 spots open because it is a shell. I don't want anyone to get anchored to this shell, but I do want to kind of give the good people a cash game build experience. It looks like we have added about 20 or 30 people into the Deposit Kingdom Rake-free double up this week. That's still far too low. Please get in this contest. It's the best double up contest on the entire site this week. We've already talked about some of these plays, so I'm just going to put a few of them in. We mentioned Taysom Hill, lock, right?
Yep, I'm good with that.
Allen Robinson, lock, right?
Yep.
Cole Kmet for now, lock.
Yep.
Browns D, lock.
Yeah.
Metcalf, are we going to put him in this shell right now?
I don't want to call him a lock.
Right.
Let's let's leave that for now.
Of these, are we going to make the decision just right now, JT over Kupp?
I think I would. I mean, I'm not going to tell anyone they're wrong to do Kupp instead of JT, but that's the way I'm leaning.
Okay. And we didn't talk about him a ton, but in the mid-tier wide receiver, assuming DJ Moore plays, how are you feeling about in that mid-tier range?
Feeling about DJ Moore?
DJ Moore, yeah.
he's a guy who projects well. I like him. The projection makes sense, but he just feels gross. Like, I don't want to have to play DJ Moore. Like, those are the guys that I'm hoping something happens over the next couple of days, that I don't have to play DJ Moore. I don't have to play DK Metcalf.
Yeah. Well, let's just look at something. I want to look at this as an experiment. If we take Taylor out, and let's just say, let's go Keyshawn Vaughn. Let's go James Conner. And then who would be our third running back in this scenario? If we're not going with JT, who would you toss in here?
Probably Gibson, I would think.
Gibson. So if we do Gibson, and now we get to Kupp.
Now you can get to Kupp easy.
And wait, does that leave us Metcalf? Oh, 200 off of Metcalf. This is why it's a shell, folks. It's you got to constantly be molding and shaping this to get exactly what you want. Oh, man. But this is where we're going to stop, because I want people to understand the decisions that us cash game grinders face each and every week. You get to the end of the road. You're ready to grab that pint of gold, the bucket of gold at the end of the rainbow, Carty, and then they say, no, you're $200 short. And this is, the chat is already ready to think through these situations. Would you come down to
probably
Huntley?
the move. Yeah. If you really want Metcalf, that's how you do it, I think.
This is it. You go Huntley to Metcalf. And now this is a question. A cash game grinder leaving $300 salary on the table. Would we ever consider such a thing, Derek?
Yeah, 300 is not a big deal.
Okay. Whew. All right. Because I like I don't like to leave much shekels laying around here. Okay. So I feel like the shell is coming together well. I'm feeling good heading into the weekend. I'm turning on notifications for everyone. I am going to get the body language expert on the Sean McVay thing in case Sony Michel opens up. Derek, any final words here for all these potentially new cash game grinders coming into our world this week?
No, just appreciate the beauty of the cash game. That's the main thing.
It is. And, it technically might be more science than art, but we know it's more art than science, Derek.
In my heart, it's more art than science.
That's right. All right, guys, we really appreciate you hanging out. I will be back on Sunday AM at 10 a.m. to update you guys on my shell, all the best cash game plays. Follow Derek Carty on Twitter at Derek Carty. Subscribe to the Blitz projection system, the best in the biz. We appreciate you guys for hanging out. Good luck in cash game week.